I'm Donald Truxillo. I'm located in Portland, Oregon at Portland State University, and I'm one of the authors of your textbook, and we're here to talk to you today about job analysis. What got me first interested in IO psychology was a course I took as an undergraduate at LSU on IO psychology. Up to that time, I'd been thinking that I wanted to do clinical psychology. And then when I took this course, I realized, wow, this is really an interesting, different angle on psychology. And you're really getting to try to work with people in the context where they spend most of their adult lives, which is at work. So from there, I really became interested in it, and everything from job satisfaction to personnel selection to employee training and development. Job analysis is one of these parts of IO psychology that many people haven't heard of. People have heard of other aspects of human resource management, such as training and performance management, but job analysis is sort of hidden. The thing is, job analysis is really one of the most important aspects of IO psychology because it's the basis of other functions. So for instance, you need to do a job analysis before developing selection procedures, developing a training program, or understanding what performance management means in your organization. So it really is the basis for these other functions, including even developing compensation and pay systems for employees. So job analysis involves understanding what the employee does on the job and what characteristics the employee needs to actually be able to do his or her job. So one of the ways this is often defined is that you try to understand what tasks the person performs on the job and what knowledge, skills, and abilities and other characteristics they need to be able to do the job. From understanding those tasks and knowledge, skills, and abilities, which we call in our lingo KSAs, that helps the person understand what it is that is needed on the job so that they can be trained, new employees can be selected or hired, and you can also develop compensation systems to pay them appropriately. So job analyses are typically done through a number of methods, such as interviews and surveys. So very often, you as the job analyst have to interview employees to understand what their jobs involve. Now, the people that we interview are not just employees, but usually employees and their supervisors, both of whom are familiar with the job. Together, employees and their supervisors are called subject matter experts, or in job analysis lingo, SMEs. So by interviewing these SMEs, by giving them surveys, by observing them doing their work, this is really one of the these are the most important ways that people collect job analysis information. There are lots of ways to do job analyses in organizations, and it really depends on what your goal is, whether you need a lot of detailed information about one job, or you want to look at a few jobs and see how they compare to each other. So an example might be, like in my own work at one time, was doing public safety job analyses for police and fire hiring. So let's say you wanted to do a job analysis for a police officer, you would maybe interview a large number of subject matter expert police officers, so maybe police officers and their sergeants. You could then do ride-alongs to observe what they actually do on the job. After you interview them and you've done some ride-alongs, you can actually do surveys with the police officers and the police sergeants so that you can find out how critical their job tasks are relative to others and what are the most important KSAs that a person needs to be able to do those jobs. Then in the end, you might actually do yet another survey to find out which KSAs are most closely linked with the job, so you can prioritize those knowledge, skills, and abilities in the hiring process. And then in the end, you end up with a very long list of tasks that are performed on the job, possibly hundreds, and a list of knowledge, skills, and abilities that a person needs to perform those tasks. And again, this is great information to have when you're trying to develop selection procedures or if you're trying to develop a training program for these jobs. I think, the jobs that I've analyzed through my career, the ones that have been the most interesting have been public safety jobs, just because it's this aspect of work that we know is so important for our day-to-day lives, but we don't really know what these people do exactly on their jobs. There's a lot of technical requirements and a lot of issues that we as members of the public don't necessarily deal with. I think for me, the most eye-opening were the police jobs, which I've already mentioned just a bit in before. Was the police jobs let you see this aspect of life that we're not necessarily always exposed to. We get to see the issues that police officers have to deal with, whether it's boredom from time to time or high stress all of a sudden, or actually dealing with some very unpleasant aspects of society and how they work around that. And they really have to deal with people who need their help. I think the biggest change that's coming about these days in the field of job analysis is a move away from calling the procedure job analysis and thinking maybe more in terms of work analysis. Now, that might sound like just a minor semantic change, but it actually has a great meaning to it. The idea is that in the past, over the last several decades, when we've done job analyses, we've thought in terms generally of a single job that's fairly stable, doesn't change except very slowly, and that we can define the tasks and the knowledge, skills, and abilities for that particular job. The idea of thinking in terms of work analysis, this really implies the fact that work is changing very, very quickly these days, and such that if you get into a particular job when you join an organization, it could change in a matter of weeks or months. And also the idea that we're not necessarily looking at an individual job in isolation, but how it integrates with the rest of the team. This is really important, I think, for students to keep in mind as you're going out into the world, is that jobs do change really quickly. The job that you're hired for when you come into an organization may not be the same just a short time later, and that you will have to be working with other people. And so the idea of going to work analysis or thinking in terms of work analysis means we might want to be analyzing the knowledge, skills, and abilities a person will need when they join an organization, and that they are likely to need while they are members of that organization or in that organization working with others. So it's a shift away from individual jobs in isolation that are stable to an idea of thinking that jobs are much more fluid, they change quickly, and they have to work with other jobs and integrate well with other jobs.